Hello again. I'm Marvin Beloff, and I'm here tonight on behalf of the Meriden Symphony Orchestra, and I've got a challenge for you. Picture this. It's Saturday, May 1st, 7:30 p.m. You're seated in the audience at Maloney High School in Meriden, and you're about to enjoy Mussorgsky's pictures at an exhibition. Performed, of course, by the Meriden Symphony Orchestra, whose fame is growing by leaps and bounds. Permanent conductor Bob Coccagnia is there, as is guest conductor Freddie Rossomando, and guest artist Tom Massey on the clarinet. Suddenly, pictures are flashed on the auditorium walls, winning impressions resulting from a local student art music contest done while they listened to Mussorgsky's pictures at an exhibition. We think that's another terrific blending of the arts. A must-see. Don't miss it, May 1st at Maloney High School. Now here today to talk about this upcoming concert and other topical subjects are maestros Bob Coccagnia, of the Meriden Symphony Orchestra, and guest conductor Freddie Rossomando. Bob, Fred, welcome. And now let's get right down to business. 30 minutes goes very fast. Bob, I'd like to ask you, how long has it been since you've been the leader and the head of the Meriden Symphony Orchestra? And I'd also like you to tell us a little bit about what you do as the conductor of the orchestra and maybe some of the surprises that you found.
Well, my official title is that of music director, and I have been music director. I will complete my 6th year in that capacity at the end of the concert in May. The music director has many functions. I can't say I'm extremely surprised, but I have been caught a time or two. My predecessor, Bruin Littman, told me that when I took the job 6 years ago that perhaps not 3 minutes would go by on any given day, holidays included, that I would not think of the Meriden Symphony in some capacity, and I have to say that's true. The job is a big one. Music director not only, of course, physically conducts the concerts, but is responsible basically for most of the programming and overseeing the program committee, and just basically many details, all of the musical details that pertain to the orchestra, the musicians, the various stage manager, personnel manager. The board of directors, which I'm sure we'll talk about later, has many additional responsibilities. But the music director, even when there is a guest conductor, is responsible for dotting the I's and crossing the T's, and to make sure that everyone knows what they should be doing and has everything that they need.
Yeah, well, we've been watching you, and I'm, being on the board, familiar with the kind of responsibilities that you have, and we're very fortunate to have you there.
Oh, thank you.
Fred, you also have had a distinguished background up on the podium in front of an orchestra. Tell us something about your training and what you've done.
Well, first, in college, I was given the opportunity by several of the teachers at Western Connecticut Music School, where I was attending, to conduct choruses and orchestras. And in fact, at one point, for 4 years, I conducted a chorus with about 45 or 50 rehearsals a year. So by the time I left Western Connecticut, given this wonderful opportunity, I had over 200 rehearsals that I had already led many kids, and it was just a great experience. I liked it so much that in my senior year, I was given the opportunity to study with the very famous conductor Howard Barlow. Mr. Barlow had retired. He was at that time in his late 70s, and he had retired and was living now in Bethel, Connecticut, which is very close to Danbury, where I was going to school. So I had a chance to study with him. I was introduced to him by the chairman of our department, and he was just a wonderful human being as well as a fantastic conductor.
It's a famous name. What did he...
Well, he was conductor for many years with the Firestone Orchestra and the Bell Telephone Hour.
Right.
Probably some of the people, I would say 50 years and older, would remember his name. He was
I almost
huge.
Make that.
He almost made it. My mother remembered him. My father did too. They grew up listening to him on the radio.
Right.
In fact, I really didn't know about it very much when I first got the lessons. I came home back to my apartment and called up my parents to tell them that I was studying, and they said, "With who?" And I said, "Howard Barlow." My mother said, "Oh my God, I know Howard, you know," or about him, you know. And I remember just about every lesson, even though it was many years ago. And I only studied with him for about 6 months because that was the end of my senior year. And he was the greatest influence, or top 3 influence on my entire career, because every lesson was monumental. It was supposed to be a 40-minute lesson. They were 2-hour lessons, and he was very giving. I was his only conducting student, and he had a picture. He introduced it to me, my first lesson of Toscanini, on his desk. He was so proud of that picture. I'm sure there's not that many around, and it was a beautiful inscription to Howard Barlow from Arturo Toscanini, and he treasured that. Every time we went over, I saw that picture, you know. So I knew I was in the midst of greatness, and so I was very fortunate.
It sounds true. And have you ever done opera?
I did a few excerpts when I went on to get my graduate degree at Indiana University. I studied with Wolfgang Vaccano, and he was a European-styled conductor. Passed away a few years ago now, but he was quite a conductor, and he was mostly an opera conductor. So at Indiana, I had some experience, but mostly orchestral, whereas in college, most of my experience was choral, so I was able to get both.
Well, I know both of you are teachers, and Bob, tell us a little bit about public school and the duties and the important things that you're doing.
Yeah, I teach in the Meriden Public Schools, instrumental music in the elementary schools, actually 8 elementary schools, all 8 of them. Some spread pretty thin, but I managed to get to all 8 each week. Children are in 5th grade only. They're all instrumental beginners. We teach all of the winds, percussion, strings, actually violin only. We don't go into the cello sometimes, but not this year. And at about in the month of April, we begin what we call a citywide band and orchestra, which I'm responsible for. Well, the band borders 100, about 100 kids. Once a week we rehearse. And the orchestra gets up to between 25 and 30, on a good year, 35 or so. Basically all violin players. So we kind of cover the bases. In that regard, the students get 1 lesson a week for 30 minutes. And I think it's good instruction. I'm proud of it. They learn techniques of the instruments, history of the instrument. And by the time they go up to the middle school, they have a knowledge of some basic theory. They should be able to execute various kinds of notes, whole, half, eighth notes. And like I say, I try to foster a love of the instrument and for music in general. That's the big part, just to get them up to the next level where they want to enlist at the middle school level.
And then they can kind of take off on their own because you've given them that,
I hope so.
That basic
Yeah, we hope so.
Support.
It's very important at that age. If they slip through the elementary school without instruction, then they get into the middle school years and they have a million alternatives, and it's very difficult to have them begin at that age.
It might even be too late.
It may well be.
Yeah.
It may well be. Yeah.
And Fred, you're at Moran. I understand you've been there for some 20 years.
Yes,
Well.
in fact, when I started, it was, I always get this a little confused, January of '72. And at that time, I was in the elementary level, and I had 3 elementary schools in which I taught general music and choral music. Then in that next September of 1972, there was an opening at Moran Middle School, and at that time we had a general music and a choral program for one teacher, and then the second music teacher did the instrumental music and all the ensembles. And when I went to Moran, the first person I met was Bob, and we hit it right off. We went out to lunch, and I'd paid,
He always gets that in.
Yeah.
Never lets
He always forgets his wallet.
Ah, yeah. Still do.
Still does, yeah.
He's a smart fella.
Yeah.
Clever.
Yeah. I think he takes it from his brother. His brother's quite a clarinetist as well. Anyway, I really liked it. For 6 years, I was in the classroom, and for a few years, I taught with Bob. Then Bob left to go get his graduate degree, and another director came in, and eventually Bob wound up in Meriden. I stayed at the school, and in 1978, there was a change in policy where they basically dropped general music from the curriculum in middle school and basically replaced it with health curriculum that became mandated. When that happened, they also, since I had seniority in the building, I wound up with the instrumental job. I'm a pianist, well, decent anyway, and I had learned all the instruments at college, studied the flute, the clarinet, and trumpet, and trombone, drums, but it had been now 8 years since I had really played them or had to teach them. I taught them at my practice teaching, but I didn't taught them in 8 years. So I was a little nervous about taking over the job. And I went right to Bob. We had remained friends, and Bob came in and gave me some pointers and tricks about playing wind instruments, especially the clarinet and flute. And I used every one of them. And within the first 2 years, I really reacquainted myself with playing. Found how much I really liked playing them now. I really didn't enjoy that much in college playing the clarinet and so forth, but now I really do. And I play with the students quite a bit. And since 1978, I've been the instrumental director there. And we have a concert band. We have a cadet band, which is basically sixth graders, because it's a 6, 7, 8 middle school. And I also retain the chorus, so I do both. I have the chorus, and I also have a string ensemble, and we also have a stage band that meets after school.
Well, I would say that Wallingford is fortunate to have you there, and I'm sure that we're going to ask you a little later on about some of the young people that you've taught. Bob, the theme of our May 1st concert is Picture This. Let us know what to expect that evening regarding the Student Art Music Contest, and tell us how this program came about, and don't be afraid to really push it, because we want everybody out there to come on May 1st to this concert.
It's going to be quite a show. We're proud of it. There's a lot there. When we started out, to be frank with you, I thought, well, do I have enough in this one? And little by little it evolved, and with Fred's help also, he made a few suggestions that we'll talk about. I always wanted to do pictures at an exhibition. It's an orchestral showpiece. It's a virtuoso piece for orchestra. I have to think about the musicians as well as the audience, as you can well imagine. And I thought, good time to do it. I've been wanting to do it for years, as I said. And I thought, art, music, perhaps we can get the children involved. Once a year, I do provide tickets to my students to attend a Meriden Symphony performance. And I had the idea of doing the same with Fred. Fred has his hands on about 130 kids, such as I do, weekly. So we do distribute, or we will distribute, tickets to those children, and they must be accompanied by an adult.
Great.
So we fill up a lot of seats that normally perhaps would not have been filled, and it's the way we reach out to the children of the community. Generally, it's only in Meriden, but this time, because of the special circumstance, we're able to go to Wallingford.
Okay, well, believe it or not, we've gone through 15 minutes, and we're going to be coming back, and so don't go away. Like Larry King says, we'll be right back.
Picture this. You turn on the radio, you raise your brush. The Meriden Symphony Orchestra is playing Majorsky's Pictures at an exhibition. They follow you. You follow them. Now, picture the audience. It's May 1st, 7:30 p.m. at Maloney High School in Meriden. Suddenly, your picture is projected on the auditorium wall. She won the Student Art Music Contest. You be a part of the picture. Call 634-2604.
Well, welcome back. And we're going to go right back to Bob Coccagnia and let him finish what he was discussing, because we got to hear a little bit about that concert that we're going to be having May 1st at 7:30 at Maloney High School.
Yeah, we were talking about the programming and how it evolved. And as many people I'm sure watching know, I had the Meriden Youth Orchestra years ago. And the principal clarinetist for a few of the years was Tom Massey. At that time, he was a student at Sheehan High School in Wallingford, and he had been a student of Fred's, and another mutual friend of ours, Lee Walkup, had been his private teacher. Tom turned into a wonderful clarinetist, really one of the talents, the young talents in this country right now. He's a phenomenal clarinetist. He's going to do a very brilliant and difficult work, the Weber Second Concerto, which Fred will conduct. So I thought we put all this together. Fred and I have been friends for years, and Tom had been a student of both of ours, actually. And eventually this concert came together. I think it's going to be a smash.
Real mutual.
And of course, pictures also includes students from Maloney, from middle schools, and they're going to be listening to the music. Pictures at an exhibition by Mussorgsky, and that's a 36-minute piece, I believe, and they're going to be
30.
painting what impressions they get from the music. They're going to present those pictures to the Meriden Symphony. The arts and crafts of Meriden are going to judge them, pick the winning 20 or so pictures, and we're going to make slides and project them on the auditorium walls kind of at the end of your presentation of that concert.
Pictures, yeah, during pictures.
During
That's
pictures.
right.
And so it's really a wonderful joining of art and music,
right.
and
That's where we're headed.
and that's where that is where we're headed. And we think that this is a prelude once again to that art council we've been talking about.
Right.
Fred, the program will also include a Duke Ellington piece.
Right.
How will the orchestra handle that?
Well, along with what Bob's has said, I had the pleasure of my first 2 years at Moran. When I took over the band, Tom Massey was my clarinetist and played first for me. And right after that, Tom left, went to the high school. He studied with Lee Walkup, who was a wonderful clarinet teacher, and helped Tom tremendously. Got Tom really excited about it. Tom played in all-state orchestras and all-state bands. And then when Tom went on and came back to us as a real talent, it was really nice of Bob to think of how we could combine my chances or experiences of touching Tom and working with him, and Bob working with him in the youth orchestra. And then we also said, well, Tom was from the late 70s and early 80s. Maybe we could get another talented student from the late 80s. And I have taught many, but there's one exciting young student. His name is Jim Oblon, and Jim came to me as a 6th grader and was just a wonderful drummer. Both of his parents are very musical and both teachers.
We might interject that he's the son of John Oblon, our
Right, that's right. John,
assistant principal at Washington Middle
Who
School.
also has a brilliant drummer in his family.
Well, that's it.
That's
yeah.
Jimmy, yeah.
That's Jimmy.
And Jimmy came to me, and I didn't really know much about him, but when he came up and played one tune with me, I'll never forget,
He is something.
he's
he took
extraordinary.
off. And
He's extraordinary.
so when Bob thought about the Duke Ellington piece, there's a piece that I played with Jim many years ago when he first came to Moran, and it was a piece called Satin Doll. And we played together, and that's when I knew that this kid could really play, you know. So when Bob thought of the tribute to Duke Ellington, I said, why not invite Jimmy to come in and play? It's a part for a drum set. And he's a great jazz drummer. He's going on perhaps to Berkeley next year. He's a senior now at Sheehan High School.
Oh, he's well known in Meriden, and I'm sure a lot of people will come to this concert just
Oh,
also to
when
hear
they
him.
hear him play,
He's extraordinary.
He's
He is
extraordinary.
extraordinary. Bob, I have to ask you, it seems as though we've been filling the auditorium lately. During the last 2 concerts, I think first time
Must be your
ever, we
aftershave.
literally filled the auditorium. And most encouraging about this whole thing is we've had a lot of students in the audience, and that's something we've been wanting to do. What are we doing right?
Well, a number of things have come in this year. Thank God, it's kind of all fallen together. We've had a fine orchestra for years, and many times after performances we would get accolades, but people would always say the same thing: what a shame, more people don't attend. And that was always true, but we tried. We put out our usual publicity, and I think we have a board that works very hard, a board of volunteers, and of course of which you are one, Marv, is chairman of publicity. And this is part of it, things like this, to bring it out to the public. programming is also at the heart of this.
That's where I wanted you to comment.
Yeah. Even when I go to hear an orchestra, if the Cleveland Orchestra comes to Hartford or New Haven, first thing I look for is the program. Even though it's a marvelous orchestra,
Yeah.
I still may not go unless I'm attracted to that program. So I've had that in my mind constantly. You can get the people there once, perhaps, but they really won't return. They won't buy tickets in the future unless they're attracted to what is being played. And of course you can't please everyone all of the time, but we are working in that direction. We do listen to our audiences, and we sometimes bring back the following year something that was a smash, such as we will next year. We will do much more of the Nutcracker at holiday time than we did this past year, and we're also bringing back Messiah, which filled the place 2 years ago. So it's pretty attractive programming, in addition to the many volunteers. And we did have a lead-off concert this year that was sponsored by the city.
Yes.
And we thought that many hundreds of people that have never heard the orchestra came into that one, and I think they got sold on it.
Right.
And it was a very attractive program, and we brought them back with James Caputo in just a few weeks after that, and that did it. We can seem to do no wrong now.
Well, we've got to keep working very hard at it, but it's a varied program.
Yes.
And it's what, as you say, you're listening to your audience, and it's what your audience wants. And we literally, and this is the second time I've served on this board, it's the first time ever that I saw the Maloney High School completely filled, every seat and people standing.
1,400 people.
That was really something. Fred, besides being an educator, you also own and operate Grace Recording Studio.
Right.
Tell us about it.
Well, I'll try to be brief as possible. When I came back from Indiana and got my first teaching job in Meriden, I was still pursuing this singer-songwriter avenue, and I had met Lee Walkup, who we mentioned earlier,
Yes.
who was Tom's teacher. Lee's a great talent and great writer as well. We met in Indiana, and when we came back, he's from Texas, but he didn't have a job, and he got one in Shelton. He teaches music in Shelton, and when Lee came back, we just decided we wanted to continue singing and songwriting. Most studios didn't give us what we wanted, so we put some money together and started Grace Recording Studio, and since then we after the first 4 or 5 years of just taking care of songwriting, then we got into commercials. And
Well, have you done any commercials that we know or we've heard about?
well, we did quite a few for the University of Hartford, the summer term program. We've done some for First Federal Savings Bank and First Constitution Bank. Just recently...
Didn't you do something for Sesame Street?
Yes, early on we had a chance to write some music for Sesame Street. It was a great little animation. The guy had a project and needed music, and together we wrote it. Most recently, one of the teams in the Sweet 16 was George Washington Colonials, a new up-and-coming university team, and they needed a commercial. And we just wrote that, and that's been playing all over Washington, D.C. for the last 3-4 months. So that was kind of exciting for us, too. And that's basically the thrust of the studio. It's audio production for documentaries and film, commercials, really anything that is creative. We just really felt that we needed an outlet to be creative, and we found the studio to be that way.
And has it been successful? Because
Oh,
it's
yeah.
not an easy business, is it?
It's very difficult. It's like any other business. It has its ups and downs. But we've been very fortunate, and of course we can only devote certain hours because
Right.
we still teach. But it's a very filling day. Most of our days are between 12 and 14 or so hours a day.
Terrific. Well, I'd like to come down and see it one of these days.
Sure.
I have a son who's interested in that sort of stuff. Bob, I'm sure that every maestro has a mission and a goal. Maybe you've answered part of this. But to bring this orchestra to a particular point, do you have certain aspirations? I mean, what goals have you got at this moment after your 6 years as the leader of this Meriden Symphony?
Well, first and foremost, the goal I've had is to maintain and to increase the basic sound of the orchestra. This requires musicians, fine musicians, and I have to really compliment my personnel manager, Janet Rosen. She has her hands on many marvelous people. Now, a lot of people don't know that we rehearse only 3 days. We do not rehearse weekly. If we have a Saturday performance, we'll rehearse maybe Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And you have to have top people. I don't teach when I get there. I don't teach.
Pardon me for interrupting, because we have very few minutes left. I wondered if you'd like to just say something about the board also that has been...
Sure. Yeah, the board of directors of the Meriden Symphony is made up of volunteers, very talented people. We try to get people on, such as yourself, that have talent in a particular area. And without the board working to their capacity, there simply is no orchestra. Their function is to keep the Meriden Symphony here, playing for the people in Meriden. That requires finances. It requires a multitude of abilities that these people have, and they're all volunteers. Simply, we don't exist without the board.
We do have a fundraising going on right now, and
we do.
And as you know, it's been tremendously successful. Of course, Peter Birch has been heading that up, and he is...
Even I contributed. How about you?
Every member of the board has contributed at a relatively high level.
Yes.
And it really, but this is going to be one of the biggest fundraising events.
Good news. Things get
Yeah.
more expensive all the time. It's
Well,
very expensive to mount a concert. Extremely
unfortunately, a concert, a symphony orchestra, as you know, obviously, cannot be self-supporting.
No.
And the only way that a community like Meriden can have a symphony orchestra is to have a group of people who are out there hustling all the time, trying to raise funds to cover the differences.
If we sell out, we pay a quarter of the bills, that's all.
Yeah.
And that's a sellout.
So we'll keep a lot of people happy with it. How did you two meet each other? You've got about 1 minute left to give me a quickie on that.
Well, as I mentioned earlier, when I received this opening at Moran to go and take it, that's,
Oh, right.
that's how we met over...
And it was my birthday, as I recall.
That's right.
The first day.
And my
That's what
my
I want to
wife,
hear about the birthday.
My wife Josephine, she said,
Yeah.
"Well, I said, I'm bringing over, that very famous quote. I'm bringing over somebody for supper.
I said, no, she'll never buy it. No.
See, that's why
kill you.
that's why he wouldn't pay, because
Yeah, he knew he was going to get
never
that.
pays on his birthday.
Never pay on my birthday.
I'd just like to say that I want to thank Bob and the Meriden Board for giving me this opportunity to conduct. It's been a while since I've been on the podium, but I'm excited about it. And I also like to put a plea out to everyone who I used to teach and might watch this program. It'd be great to see some very, very familiar faces
be
from
there.
years of past. I'd love to see you at the concert, and of course current parents and students, but also past students. I'd love to see a good showing from Wallingford. It really would thrill me.
And they should all come back and say hello to you.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I'll be there.
Terrific. Well, gentlemen, once again, we're out of time. It has been a delight for me to be here with you. And I would just like to remind everyone out there that we have got this wonderful concert on May the 1st at 7:30 at Bologna High School, and we'd love to see you there. So don't miss it. It's going to be a very important event, and we'll keep these concerts coming as long as you keep coming. Thank you once again,
Thank you.
Bob
Marv.
and Fred,
Thank you.
Pleasure.
and we'll see you soon.